Right now, all across America, people are waiting in line for this. Cafes are running out of it. The price has jumped. Supply is so tight, some shops are on wait lists into next year, all for 1 cup of bright green powder. It's on every menu. It's all over your feed. You've probably had one this week, but do you really know what matcha is? Because the drink in your hand isn't a trendy new health fad. It's 1,000 years old. It was the height of fashion in China, and then China threw it in the trash. Yeah, the most Japanese thing in your cafe? Plot twist incoming. And here's the part that makes no sense. Stay with me, because I'll come back to it. Today, some of the matcha grown in China is sold with Japanese names and Japanese packaging to hide that it's Chinese, a thing China invented then forgot, and now pretends belongs to someone else. How do you lose your own invention that badly? Let's rewind 1,000 years. Our story starts in China during the Song Dynasty, about 1,000 years ago. Now, the Chinese had been drinking tea for centuries, but in the Song Dynasty, they did something new. They took the finest tea leaves, dried them, and ground them on a stone mill into an ultra-fine powder. Then they put that powder in a bowl, added hot water, and whisked it with a little bamboo brush until it foamed into a frothy jade-green drink. If that sounds familiar, it should. That's matcha. Exactly how it's made today. They even called it mocha. Same 2 words. 1,000 years ago, in China. And this wasn't a quick drink. This was the art form of the elite. They called the method Dian Cha. Scholars wrote whole books about it, and it got competitive. There were tea battles called do cha, where people would whisk their bowls and judge each other on whose foam was whiter and lasted longer. Basically a 1,000-year-old latte art throwdown. Picture grown government officials in silk robes, furiously whisking tea, talking trash about each other's foam. That was the Super Bowl of the Song Dynasty. But they took it even further. There was an art called chabai shi, where a master would use a thin water and a teaspoon to paint pictures on the surface of the foam. Birds, flowers, poetry, on a bowl of tea. That would shimmer for a moment, then dissolve. Let that sink in. Chinese tea masters were doing latte art, 1,000 years before anyone in the West had even seen coffee. And the biggest fanboy of all? The emperor himself. Emperor Huizong was so obsessed he wrote an entire book about tea. A sitting emperor, writing a tea manual. And he'd personally perform the whisking for his ministers at banquets, showing off his foam like a proud barista, when the emperor of China would rather make you a fancy tea than run the country. You know this drink was a big deal. So here's the question. If matcha was this huge in China, the emperor's hobby, the scholar's art form, how on earth did China lose it completely? The answer is one man and one decree. Fast forward to 1391. The Song Dynasty is long gone. China is now ruled by the Ming Dynasty, and the emperor is a man named Zhu Yuanzhang, and his story matters here. He wasn't born royal. He grew up dirt poor, a peasant, even spent time as a begging monk before he fought his way to the throne. And to a former peasant, this whole powdered tea ritual, the grinding, the whisking, the foam painting, the pressing of leaves into fancy dragon cakes for the court, looked like one thing. A giant, wasteful, snobbish hassle that squeezed the common people who had to produce it. So in 1391, he signed a decree. It literally banned the compressed tea cakes used to make powdered tea. From now on, he said, just use loose leaves. Throw them in a pot, add hot water, done. And just like that, the whole world of whisked tea, the Dian Cha, the tea battles, the foam paintings, became obsolete. Within a few generations, China forgot how to make matcha. The bamboo whisk vanished from Chinese kitchens. The country that invented it moved on and never looked back. One signature, 1,000 years of tea culture, gone. That's the most powerful unsubscribe button in history. But the story doesn't end there. Because 200 years before that decree, a single visitor had quietly carried matcha out of China to an island that would never let it go. Rewind to the year 1191. A Japanese monk named Eisai had been studying Buddhism in China, and when he sailed home, he brought back tea seeds. And the Song Dynasty way of whisking powdered tea, he planted those seeds. He wrote Japan's first book on tea, and the practice found a perfect home in one place, the Zen Buddhist monasteries. And here's where a little bit of the science actually matters. The monks noticed that this whisk tea did something special. It kept them calm, but alert, through hours of meditation. That's not a myth. Matcha is rich in an amino acid called L-theanine, which, paired with its caffeine, gives you a steady focus without the jittery crash of coffee. The monks didn't know the chemistry. They just knew it worked. Calm and awake, perfect for sitting still and emptying your mind. And then Japan did something China never did. They didn't just keep matcha alive, they perfected it. Japanese farmers discovered that if you cover the tea plants with shade for a few weeks before harvest, the leaves turn a deeper, more brilliant green and grow sweeter and richer in flavor. That shading trick is exactly why your matcha is that impossible neon green, and why it tastes the way it does. They refined the stone milling, and they wrapped the whole thing in a ritual so beautiful it became a spiritual discipline. The way of tea. So China invented it, then ghosted it. Japan adopted it, raised it, and sent it to private school. Respect where respect is due. Now jump to today. For centuries, matcha stayed a quiet Japanese tradition. Honestly, even in Japan, most people rarely drink it. It's a ceremony thing, not an everyday thing. And then the world caught on. Young people looking for an alternative to coffee found their answer in that calm but alert buzz. Clean energy, they call it. The wellness crowd loved the antioxidants. And that brilliant green? It was born to go viral on TikTok and Instagram. The result? A global explosion. American matcha sales have jumped massively in just a few years. Japan's tea farms can't keep up. There are shortages, wait lists, even people scalping cans of green powder. And now, remember that loop from the very beginning? Demand got so huge that matcha is now grown far beyond Japan, including back in China, where it all started. But here's the twist. Because the world thinks matcha is Japanese, made in Japan is what sells. So some Chinese producers put Japanese-style names and labels on their matcha to seem more authentic. Sit with that. The country that invented matcha now disguises its own matcha as foreign because it forgot so completely that the thing was ever theirs. Imagine inventing something, throwing it away, and 1,000 years later buying it back with a fake foreign accent. That's the matcha story. So, do you really know what matcha is? It's not a fad. It's a 1,000-year-old Chinese art form, abandoned by the country that created it, rescued by a monk, and raised to perfection on a Japanese island. And now, finally, loved by the whole world that never knew its real story. That bright green bowl in your hands is a survivor. It crossed an ocean. It outlived the empire that invented it. And it waited 1,000 years for you to ask the right question. So next time someone hands you a matcha latte and calls it Japanese, you can tell them the rest of the story. I'm Food Talk. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.